Hello. This is Amy with. So today it's just me. Ed is actually at the doctor's appointment that he has today. So we wish him well and thank him for holding it down for the last couple of weeks. But I'm excited to bring my guest in. So, James, we always start everybody off with what service were you in and why did you choose the service you chose?
Well, I was in the Marine Corps and the Navy, and the reasons for the different services are pretty funny. So I joined the Marine Corps out of high school. I really didn't have any direction and wanted to challenge myself. I saw the posters, the uniform. I heard about this thing called recon, and I was hooked. So I joined the Marine Corps, took the recon indoc, passed it, did 4 years in Second Recon Battalion, and then I decided after that to get out. But when I was in college, I joined the PLC program and went through Officer Candidate School in 1995 and 96. And I won the Commandant's Trophy in 1995 and was awarded that at halftime at a football game. And I had planned on becoming a Marine Corps officer. A couple things happened after graduation with my flight contract and eye tests. And the Marine Corps has this ultimate way of making things difficult. And I was walking out of the recruiter's office one day, and the Navy recruiter's down the hall. And he's like, "Hey, come on in. Can I talk to you?" And so next thing you know, I was off to Pensacola, Florida, to become a naval officer. Did that, became an intelligence officer, and spent 18 years in the Navy as an intelligence officer. But the funny part is, uh, I kept getting drawn back to special ops and JSOC and SOCOM, and I did uh, 4 deployments, 3 deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq. So I couldn't get the Marine Corps stink off me while I was in the Navy, and I only actually did one 6-month deployment on an aircraft carrier. So that's the background behind me. Didn't serve in the Army or the Air Force, so we're good.
That's funny. So I served in the Army and then the Navy Reserves. And my husband served in the Marine Corps and now he's in the Air Force Reserves.
We got
So
them all covered. We
we
have
got
them all covered today.
but yeah, so what was your service as an officer? How different did you feel it was from an NCO? Or did you feel, let me ask you two questions actually. Do you feel your time in enlisted helped you as an officer?
Most definitely. Being a Mustanger I mean, being able to draw upon your experience as an enlisted person, uh, it really allows you to understand what they're going through, what position. And as a leader, it's critical to understand that. And I think it was invaluable to leverage my experience as an enlisted person as an officer.
Very good. Now, we also, Ed always asks, what did you leave behind in the military? Like he always says left behind the 24-hour clock. I'm not sure what I left behind, but um, do you feel you left anything behind?
No, I don't think I left anything behind. I think that I learned a lot and bring things forward from my time in the Marine Corps and in the Navy. Really valuable life lessons and critical skills that helped me. Maybe I would say, I mean, I was an angry kid when I joined the Marine Corps because of my youth, and maybe I left a little of that baggage behind. But mostly, I look at things that I've learned and bring forward instead of what I left behind.
Okay, so how did you when you what year did you transition out of the military?
So I joined in 1980. It's really funny. I joined on September 11th, 1986, and I got out in 1991. Went to college for 5 years and then joined the Navy. I actually EAS, end of active service, from my Navy time 10 years ago last month. So I've been out for almost a decade.
Okay. So 10 years ago, did you feel like there was adequate transition services for you?
It's funny you asked that question because I wrote in my, I wrote, I wrote this book called The War Journal, and I wrote in that book, when I transitioned out of the Marine Corps in 1991, there was no TAPS class, there was no transition programs, there was nothing. They handed me my DD 214, my dental records, and my medical records, and were like, later. And when I retired, I had to go through a TAPS class. I had to go through different evaluations for medical and dental. It was night and day. So do I think 10 years ago that the services were adequate? Yes, but that's me because I'm really not, that person who, is looking for help and asks for help. In retrospect, should I have done more? Maybe, but I was happy to be getting out of the Navy, retiring, getting my retirement pay and benefits and things like that. And I also had a wife and 3 kids, so my focus was on transitioning in my career. I already had a job and my family. So I really wasn't worried about myself. Now, interestingly enough, I never submitted claims to the VA for a lot of the things that I did. And actually, 3 years ago, I started submitting claims for PTSD, and I had back surgery and things like that. And funny story, they after 4 combat tours, after I submitted my claim, they adjudicated it and denied it.
Yes. So it was interesting. I think do it again. Have you done it again since then?
Yeah, so they finally adjudicated the PTSD, and I think it was like 3 months ago. And so it was a long time. I had to, provide evidence. And the funny thing was, they came back and said there was no connection between. They called it adjustment disorder, and then they said it was PTSD, and they couldn't find, any link to combat. And then I had to send in like my combat action ribbon, all my deployments, and I was involved in combat in some of these employments. It wasn't like, a lot of the guys who go over there, guys and girls who go over there, and they sit on a fob for 6 months or a year and never see any combat.
It's interesting. Yeah. Like I think I wish we could get to a different place with it. I have a girlfriend who has had to fight tooth and nail for her, and she has all the evidence. But I mean, I just wonder, like, why make it so hard? And then I don't know, like, yeah,
Can I can I weigh in on that for you?
sure,
So from my own personal experiences and my research, what I've found is, there seems to be like a tide that happens in the VA, and I don't know how that tide is affected. Like regular tide is by the moon and you can calculate it, high tide, low tide. But is it the leadership of the VA? Because at certain points, there's a willingness to grant, and adjudicate positively for things, and then all of a sudden they tighten the screws a little and they make it harder, for individuals. So you have like this full spectrum where some people, are fighting for, every little thing in the world, and they're winning. And then you have people who have real problems and with PTSD and depression and anxiety, and they don't seem to get the help they need. So what is the rhyme or reason behind that? I don't know. Whether it's, is it, internal, is it external? But there is no kind of steady state, or there's no, continuity. And that's what I think is the most frustrating thing for me and other veterans.
yes, I agree, 100%. If Ed were here, he would say he thinks the whole VA system needs to go away and needs to be privatized, so that we would go to like uh,
You know, I
whatever,
don't, I
and
don't
we'll
know.
have co-payments, and you wouldn't have like the VA buildings and different things like that. And I don't know, like, part of me feels that would be terrifying, because I have used the VA system since getting out at different points in my life when healthcare is so expensive and stuff like that. So between jobs, between a whole bunch of different things, so I'm one of those people. But the VA in our area is very in Washington State. It is considered one of the best VAs, but it's still the actual physical buildings also are very much in disarray. Like my daughter's like, "Oh, I want to go to your appointment with you," and I'm like, "I don't think I feel comfortable with that." Like I don't think she's prepared to see what a VA building looks like. And the women's clinic is better, but the actual where everybody goes, like the emergency room, the um, pharmacy, all your x-rays and different things like that is like the way it looks in every movie.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But here's my opinion on this. I don't think that you should privatize the VA, but what I think we should do is we should look at modernizing the VA and streamlining it. With the budget it has, there's no reason for any of these backlogs. And the problem is government is typically inefficient, military is inefficient in some ways, and there's no accountability. So it's a behemoth, and you can't just privatize it. It would require some strong leadership and some kind of just radical changes, not radical, but very substantial changes. But privatization, I don't think is the right answer.
Um, and I don't know now because I'm not in the medical field. Ed's wife is a nurse, and so I don't know if he has more theories on that. However, let's get back to you. So, got out 10 years ago. Tell us what you've been doing since, and tell us also about your book. I think that's really interesting.
Okay. After I retired, well, let me say this. From when I joined the Marine Corps and when I was in the Navy, I always had a vision. And I knew that I wanted to do certain things. And that vision kind of evolved as I went from the Marine Corps to the Navy and then my tours in the Navy. But I knew in my heart that I had wanted to do something. I wanted to start a company. And my time in service really allowed me to laser focus on what that company would be. So when I got out, I actually went to work for a Alaska Native corporation, and I stood up a division within that company, and it was called the Social Cultural Analysis Division. Because the idea that I had was that governments, State Department, USAID, a lot of the programs that they do, the military are inefficient. They really don't understand populations. They don't understand cultures. They go in and they deliver programs and initiatives and they spend a lot of money, but it really doesn't impact positively the targeted individuals or populations or communities because they don't understand the cultural nuances within different geographic areas or societies and populations. So the whole idea was to understand these populations or target groups or communities and then deliver service products, whatever that aligned with their cultural norms, worldviews, logics of appropriateness to create efficiencies. And so I did that within this 501c3. Did it for about a year and a half, learned everything that I could, and then started ENODO Global. And ENODO Global, just the title means ENODO is Latin. It means to solve or elucidate. So everything we do is to try to help solve these complex problems that exist within our society. Domestically, whether it's school violence, whether it's community policing, whether it's veteran suicide, we have programs for all of those. Internationally, we help multinational corporations do investment in foreign countries to understand how their products or services will align. And that's what we've been doing for the past almost 8 years now. And it's awesome. It's very rewarding and I love it. And it's something that I enjoy doing very much. But let's talk about the book. I think if we look at my career and accomplishments and things like that, I really don't, I don't like to talk about that much, but the book is something I am very proud of. And not because it's a #1 bestseller. The reason the book is so important to me is because it has connected with service members in ways that have been incredible. I'll give you 2 examples. One example is I've got an email. I received an email from a counselor who works for the American Warrior Project. And she said, Jim, I read your book. It was incredible. Thank you very much. It has allowed me to understand and better serve the veterans in my program. And that was, for me, that was awesome. The other thing is I was sitting at home one night and I received a phone call, and I didn't know the number, and I looked at it and I was like, well, I'll answer it anyway. And I answered it. Good evening, Jim Sisco. And they're like, hey, Jim, my name is Steve. I won't say his name. And he's like, hey, I was in the Marine Corps, and I wanted to give you a call. And I was kind of weird. I'm like, I didn't want to be like, hey, well, how did you get my number? Who are you? But he said, hey, it was kind of, he goes, hey, I just want to let you know I read your book and I wanted to reach out to you and say thank you. And I'm like, okay, great. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. And it was kind of awkward. And there was a silence. And then he said, I was at a really dark period in my life and I was considering killing myself. And when I read your book, it changed my mind. And I literally sat there and what do you say to that? I mean, I was like, okay, really cool. How you doing right now? But we spoke for about 20 minutes and it was probably the most rewarding thing. And one of the things that I'm very proud of. And when people ask me about the book, I tell them very matter of factly that it provides a guide, a roadmap for people who have mental health issues, who are going through adversity, who are facing challenges in their life. And it's a way for them to see that how other people who have had faced adversity and trauma and things like that, how they deal with it. And
What's the
that's
name of your book? I'm gonna post it.
the name of the book is The War Journal, a young Marine's discovery of critical life lessons from Desert Storm. And here's the story behind it. Yeah, I think it's a really cool story. I actually wrote in this journal every day or two. And that journal, when I left, and what happened was it was a friend of mine who said, Jim, I want you to write in this journal because when you come back from Desert Storm, because I know you're going to come back, I want to experience war through your eyes. And I was like, okay. And I did it. Bless you. So when I got back, the disappointing thing was that I put the journal in like sea bags and it traveled with me everywhere and it got unpacked and repacked. And as I moved and it finally made its way to like my bookshelf behind me, and I didn't read it for 30 years. And then when I was going through my divorce and separation, I actually pulled it off the bookshelf and I read it. And I was so upset with myself because if I had read that at different periods in my life, I probably would have not made some mistakes that I had made, and it would have been a really good guide for me. And that's why I wrote it, because I was doing a podcast and I shared the War Journal with the podcast host, and she said, Jim, can I share this with my publicist? And I said, sure. No, yeah, I didn't think about it at all. And her publicist called me within an hour and said, you have a #1 bestseller here. You don't even know it. And I was like, yeah, all right, whatever. Sure, fine. And she convinced me to write the book, and I did. And a week and a half after it was published, it was a bestseller. So it's not me advertising or promoting the book. It's really the people who have purchased the book, the feedback I've gotten, the comments, and just the whole idea behind it and what it's about.
Nice. I think that's excellent. I'm driving back and forth on Friday from Washington to Oregon for an event, and I was just thinking, not maybe an hour ago, I need to have a book ready to listen to for my drive. So I will definitely get that. Is it on? Um,
So it's not on audiobook yet. And here's why. People have asked me to do the audiobook, but they want me to do the narration because I actually did the journal entries. But if you read the book, you'll see you have the journal entry, and then you have like the context behind it. So I'm writing in, what happened there, the actual excerpt from the journal, and then I provide the context to that. So they're like trying to get a young Jim and an older Jim, and they're having me doing the context or doing the actual. So it's on its way. I apologize, and we'll hopefully get it out within the next month.
Well, I will. I'm a book reader, like a reader as well. So I'll just buy it on Amazon. I noticed that it's there. So I'll scoop one up and I recommend it um, to anyone else. It is on Amazon for those readers among us. I feel like sometimes I'm the only one.
So let me say this. I want to impress this upon people. This book is not, I have no design or no intention of trying to use this book to promote myself or make a lot of money. I get $2.11 each purchase for royalties, and Amazon gets like 7 or 6. It's ridiculous. But the idea is, I'm actually taking the proceeds from this and donating to DAV. So DAV helped me with my claim for my PTSD, and helped me adjudicate it, and they really did an outstanding job. So what I get from my royalties, I'm actually donating to DAV.
That's very cool. All right. So you have your book, and you have your company. How's your company doing now, or what things are you working on?
So we're working on a political campaign at the local level right now, but I'm actually engaged with the Iraqis. I was over in Baghdad a couple months ago, walking around the green zone by myself, where everybody was freaked out and was afraid for me. And I speak some Arabic, and it's really no big deal. I say there's more Botox in Baghdad than there is bullets in Baghdad. Very cosmopolitan, very modern, very secure. So we signed an agreement with the Rafidin Center for Dialogue, which is a think tank, and we're getting ready to kick off some projects. Also have a couple projects that we might start with the World Bank in Sierra Leone and a couple other places in West Africa. So I'm in a good place. I enjoy what I'm doing, and the company's doing well. And I had a kind of a tough time for a little while going through COVID and going through the divorce and custody battles. So the company kind of was, I was distracted, and now I'm back nose to the grindstone, and we're doing good things.
Okay. So I want to ask, how did you find out about the podcast? Was it through Alex, or how did you find out about the podcast?
I honestly started looking at podcasts that dealing with veterans issues, and started doing some outreach and engagement. And I sent out like a flurry of emails when the book started coming out, and that's how it happened.
Okay, very good. Um, okay, I was going to say, there was, if you could go back and do anything differently, do you have anything you would do differently, or do you feel like you're kind of happy with where you are, so therefore happy with your journey?
Oh, I've made some horrendous mistakes in my life, and I have suffered, the consequences of those mistakes. But I, 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 I mean, I'm at where I'm at. I enjoy where I'm at in my life. I don't look back. I'm always looking forward. If you're looking back, you're usually depressed. If you're worried about the future, you're anxious. You have to understand where you're at in your life, and be kind of content with that, and be very methodical with your goals and aspirations and where you want to be and what you want to do and what you want to accomplish. And for me, I know that there's a wonderful life ahead of me. I know that I'm going to find a woman that I love, and I'm going to share my heart and my soul with, and it's going to be incredible. I'm going to be reunited with my children, and I'm going to be a great role model for them. I'm not worried about my company or wealth or money or because the greatest things and joys that I find in my life are helping people. I coach rugby. I volunteer to do that. I've enrolled in a mentorship program where I help veterans who are incarcerated, and I go to court and listen to their cases. And I'm giving a commencement speech on June 1st. I'm doing podcasts like this. And that's my biggest reward in my life. So no, I don't regret anything. I've made some bad choices and bad decisions and done some really bad things, and I've hurt people, but I can't go back, and I wouldn't go back because what's ahead of me is more important than what's behind me.
I always think that's an indication sometimes within our, not just our self care, but our mental health, when you do finally walk out of the darkness, is when you can appreciate the darkness. You can realize, like, you didn't want to make those mistakes. And, like, that's kind of a hard question. But if you can appreciate where you are now, I think that's a commendable place to be. So that's exciting. Um, do you have any new projects? So you said the book was written without an expectation. Is there more books coming down the road?
So when after, this is really funny, I mean, in a weird way, but when I started reading the War Journal, and then I was going through the divorce, I had to go through certain things, and I started actually writing a manuscript, and I wrote 2 full seasons of like a Netflix or HBO miniseries called Jim. And it's a really powerful story. And the people who've read the manuscript actually say it's better than the War Journal, the book that I wrote. And, but I really haven't taken any time to socialize or share the manuscript. If there's anybody listening and they're involved in production, or this is a very powerful miniseries. Like I said, I wrote, I think, 2 full seasons and have the outline for season 3 and 4. And that's kind of when I get time, I think I'll start making some investments in engagements in China, trying to share that. I mean, hell, I never thought I'd get a #1 bestseller. And I mean, maybe I'll be in Hollywood and, kicking off the premiere of the miniseries.
That would be cool. And I could say, I knew him when, or I haven't.
You know what, Amy? I'm going to make you a deal. Here's my deal. You're never going to say I knew him when he was X, because what I'll do, even if that happens, all you have to do is email me or call me up, and I'll come back on and we can talk about that.
Okay, deal. Absolutely. We'd love that. We're just, because our podcast is almost 2 years old. And Ed was like, I think we should have some people from the beginning. Also, I think you learn things as a podcast host, like with facial expressions and different things. There were some people that had these amazing stories that were amazingly horrific. And I was like, and Ed's texting me, close your mouth, close your mouth.
Well, you haven't read the book, right?
No, I haven't. So I'm going to order it tonight. So
when you talk about horrific stories, I'm going to give you an excerpt from the story. So it was about 7 months into the deployment, and we had just gone out on our first mission. We just returned, and I was sitting in a circle, and it was 5 of us sitting there, and we're all, reading mail and eating and joking around. And Lance Corporal Stroud said, "Hey, Corporal Sisco, can you help me with the radio?" And in typical Marines, you know how they are. I was like, "Fuck you. What are you, a retard? Do it yourself." And Mike was sitting next to me, and Mike goes, "Bad dog." And we started laughing. And I was like, yeah, I was probably kind of a dick. And so I got up and I walked over and I started helping out Stroud. And I was over there for about a minute. I mean, maybe a little more. I heard this huge explosion. and the explosion was right from where I was sitting. And I went running back, and I was the first person on the scene. Mike, the guy who I was sitting next to, a good friend of mine, was sitting there, and a hand grenade had come off of his 782 gear, fell between his legs. He tried to pick it up. It blew up, and both his arms were gone. And it was just, his face was black and charred with powder burn. And everybody watches movies and thinks blood and guts. It's not like that, because the heat from the hand grenade just, cauterized everything. So it's all just black and charred, and his legs hanging there. And the other guys who were in the group, they all had gotten shrapnel, and they were like screaming and crawling away. And I just sat there and looked at him. And I have training, I can do trachs and CPR and give IVs and things like that. But I knew there was nothing I could do. He just kind of, his head went down and he was over. So the medevac helicopter came in, flew him out. And, when someone dies in combat, you have to go through their personal gear and their military gear and separate everything. And I volunteered to do that. I had known Mike for years. We were friends. And I was literally taking like pieces of flesh and, bones, and wiping it off his gear, and, separating everything, and had to annotate everything on a log. And, my hands were just messed with everything. And I got to his wallet, and, one Pennsylvania driver's license, one social security card, $23 in cash. And then I pulled, I looked inside one of the, kind of the pockets, and I pulled out a picture, and it was a picture of my girlfriend. And on the back, it said, "Love, Ashley." So when people talk about trauma, I was a 22-year-old Marine whose good friend had just died. And fortunately, he telling me, saying "bad dog," saved me from potentially dying. And I just found out that my girlfriend, who I'd been dating for a year, was cheating on me with him. So trauma for me is a totally different spectrum, a totally different level. And that whole rush of emotion that you want to kill the person who died a couple hours ago, no, not many people can experience that. So when I talk about my experiences, and I talk about trauma, and I talk about the things like in the book, you'll see that it does provide a guide for people, because if I can overcome these things and the other things that happen in my life, certainly anyone else can. And that is, for me, why I have very strong opinions on helping people, and very strong opinions on the VA and mental health and PTSD. And because I know there's a lot of people out there who are suffering, and I know there's a lot of people out there who aren't suffering. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are like me, who would never talk about this. And it takes a lot more courage to speak about these things than to just ball them up and compartmentalize them or lock them in a box. So I'll leave you with that.
All right. That was very deep. We could unpack that for days.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that you would like to share with the readers? But before you say anything, I want to say thank you for everyone who's listening out there. If you like what we're talking about, follow us. And if you have a resource for James, definitely let me know, and I will connect you to.
Cool. Hey, I appreciate it. In closing, I'll say the book is more, that was just one episode in the book. I mean, it's filled with a lot of really good information, some really funny times, things that happened. And at the end, I have a reflection section where everything comes together. And I also have a critical life lessons section where it talks about education, faith, relationships. So it talks about love very candidly about these things. And I know for me, it was very helpful to write it. And from people who have spoken with me, it's very helpful to gain perspective in a way that would kind of help with people who are facing challenges or adversity in their lives. So that's what I would, how I want to close is I hope people can learn from my mistakes and my things, and that they don't have to go through the same things. And that's it.
Perfect. Thank you. Stay right there.